Welcome. In this session, we will be discussing boarding. It is important to understand what type of boarding is approved by HUD. The approved HUD method for boarding is known as bolt boarding, or otherwise known as compression boarding. This is the only acceptable method of boarding in the preservation and REO industry. This HUD approved diagram for bolt boarding is a great way to take a look at what needs to be done. The 2x4s on the inside should overlap by 8 inches. The plywood is on the outside, and it's kind of like a sandwich compression where the bolts are passed through the face of the plywood, through the 2x4s, and screwed together. You can see here that 2 braces are required and 4 carriage bolts are required. The carriage bolts are also required to have washers and nuts on them. This creates a very solid method of boarding a window and prevents access into the house. Be sure to always read your work order. Some work orders will allow you to board an opening without an approval. Other work orders will require a bid. But whether the work order is completed or not, you must supply the exact size of the window. It is so important that you are prepared when you arrive at the job. Purchase your carriage bolts in advance from a preservation supply company. Purchasing bolts from a retail store is very cost prohibitive. And make sure you always purchase 12 or 14-inch carriage bolts. Preservation supply companies such as U.S. Hardware Supply and MFS Supply are a great place to get these. Also, having the proper plywood and 2x4s on your truck so that you're prepared is a really good best practice. When boarding a window, be sure to only use plywood. Using particle board and OSB is not permitted under any circumstance. Make sure that you use the correct size plywood. Windows require 1/2-inch thick plywood. Doors and security doors require 5-inch thick plywood, and sliding glass doors and garage doors require 3/4-inch plywood. The material used for bracing on the inside of the window should be a minimum of 2x4. You can use 2x6 or 2x8s, but 2x4 is the standard and the minimum. 2 braces are required for every boarding, and 4 carriage bolts are required for every boarding, 2 per brace. Remember, the bracing must extend 8 inches on either side of the window, and the bracing must never be placed inside the window return. Our clients consider broken glass a health hazard, so be sure to remove the broken glass from the window, the floor, and the exterior of the house. Take good pictures to support this work. Take pictures of the broken glass in the window and surrounding areas showing that the glass has been removed, and the glass on your trailer and truck. If the sash can be removed, place it in the closet and take a picture of it. Some boarded windows need to be painted. Read your work orders carefully to verify. Local laws will override any work orders, so be sure that you're familiar with the ordinances in your area. If you have a question about this, always call the GCP office with any questions. Let's look at this CoreLogic work order here. We're going to come down and find the reglazing and boarding line item, which I've highlighted here. There's a lot of verbiage that you can see, but basically what this is saying is board the window. If you find a broken window on this property, you're going to board it. At the same time, you're going to provide measurements and pictures of the window. If the window is damaged, we need to see pictures of the window. Some windows can't be reglazed, and if they can't be reglazed, we need to know why. Or if the window is so damaged it can't be reglazed, we need to know why, and we need pictures of that. We need pictures of all the dimension for all boarding that you've completed and the reglazing that we're going to do as well. So that's a CoreLogic order. Let's look at this MCS order. MCS, on the other hand, says bid only. Do not complete the emergency repairs. Okay, and then let's come down here and we have boarding. If broken windows or doors exist, please bid to board. So we're going to need pictures. We're going to need a number of openings. We're going to need dimensions. We're going to need to know the width of the plywood we're going to use. And for windows, we're going to be using 1/2-inch. And for doors, we're going to be using 5/8, and for garage doors and sliding glass doors, we're going to be using 5/8. So just be sure to read each work order because each work order is different. Some work orders require that you complete the work on site the first time out, but you can't assume that that's going to be the case for every one because some only want us to bid. So it's very important that you read your work orders and understand each one. Let's look at a proper set of pictures. This particular window, the glass was broken on the top pane. All the glass was removed from the top pane, and then the bottom sash was open to allow the carriage bolts to pass through. On the upper right hand picture you can see that the 2x4s extend at least 8 inches past the sides of the window, and that there are 4 carriage bolts with nuts and washers on them. Then the vendor drew the bolts tight, creating the compression boarding that's required. On the outside of the window you can see the carriage bolts in the plywood, and on the inside you can see them poking through into the 2x4s. This is the proper bolt boarding method. This particular client on this work order asked that the board be painted, so we painted it to comply with the order. This last set of pictures here shows that the glass was removed and placed in the truck for disposal. On the right hand side, this sash was able to be removed from the window completely and was placed in the closet. It's important to document the sash placed in the closet. Now let's look at some improper boarding pictures. There's a couple things going on in this picture here. The plywood on the outside seems to cover the window completely, but there's only one brace. And besides the fact there's only one brace, there's only one bolt. No matter what size window it is, you are required to have 2 braces and 4 bolts with washers and nuts on each window. Here's another example of an improperly boarded window. We can see that we have 2 braces this time and 4 bolts. But the issue is that the braces are on the inside of the window. The braces should extend 8 inches on either side of the window, but placed on the outside of the window. The best way to board this window would have been to run the bracing up and down. This would have saved on the material, because the material would not have had to run all the way to the right side of the window where you didn't have to board. So you could have run the boards up and down. When running boards up and down, this is acceptable, but just make sure that they extend 8 inches on either side of the window as well. When ordered to do a security door, make sure that you have the proper hinges and a padlock and hasp with you. The plywood should be 3/4 inches. The door should swing freely and should be locked with a padlock and hasp. Make sure you take all of your before, during, and after photos to support your work completed. Boarding a garage door takes a different technique. Bolt boarding techniques are not used. Start by building a 2x4 frame inside the door opening. Screw the boards to the floor and to the door return. Place the middle 2x4 bracing 48 inches on center. Screw 3/4 inch plywood to the frame that you have made. If a security door is required, cut out a door and install hinges and a padlock and hasp. This diagram shows you how to complete this process properly. Wood has been screwed to the floor and the sides and top of the garage door opening. Then 2x4s are placed 48 inches on center to complete the frame. 3/4 inch plywood then is screwed to the face of the frame, and a security door, if it was ordered, is then cut out of the plywood and a padlock and hasp is secured. When completing this type of work, make sure that you take before, during, and after photos to document all of your work and show measurements of the type of wood and the thickness of the plywood that you used to complete the job. GCP will bid on reglazing windows whenever it is possible to reglaze a window. When supplying a measurement for boarding a window, also supply a measurement of the panes of glass for that window. GCP will then place the proper bid to reglaze the window. Let's just review the pictures that are required for a boarding. We need pictures before you start the work, pictures after you remove the broken glass, pictures of the glass on your truck, exterior picture of the completed boarding, and an interior picture of the completed boarding. Remember that all boardings require the proper pictures to support the work that was completed. And also remember that a PCR report is required for all work orders where a boarding was ordered. This includes initial secures, resecures, and bid approvals. Thank you.